I've asked my friend Blake to share his experience with this step, with this part of the fourth step.
Thanks.
Go get him, Blake.
All right. Blake, alcoholic. Can everybody hear me okay? Awesome, good. How about now? Okay, good. So, thank you, Matt, for asking me to speak. I wasn't here last week. I was out in California burying my dad, so I had no idea what part I was going to share on, which is probably best, because I would have had a ton of fear, and I would have tried to make everything sound great, and I would have, probably made up some stories and tried to sound good, and that's not the case. So I'm very grateful that I didn't have time to think about this. Just to qualify a little bit about myself, my first real drink, it was a summer. I was spending it with my dad and my stepmom, and we were playing inside, being crazy fools, me and my other brothers and sisters. And my stepmom said, "You guys need to go outside. Just go outside, get out of my hair." And she said, "Grab anything you want to drink from the fridge in the garage." And so we went out there, all my brothers and sisters grabbed, Coke or something like that. And I peeked my head back in the house and I said, "You said we could have anything we wanted?" And she says, "Yes, just get out of my hair." Okay. So I got a Coors Light because I saw my dad doing it. I thought my dad was a man's man. I wanted to be just like him. He was my hero. And so I commenced to drink that Coors Light. My dad comes home from work and he sees me on the porch just swinging along with a Coors Light in my hand. And he's like, "So, how's it going?" And I said, "Oh, it's going great, And he went inside and talked to my stepmom, and he said, "Blake's out there drinking a beer." And she's like, "Yeah, he freaking tricked me. He tricked me." And she told him the story. So my dad went out there and asked if he could have a drink, and he drank, most of it, trying to, keep my alcohol intake limited. And so that was the experience with my first drink. The important thing, I didn't think it now, but now having looked back, the important thing that came out of that was I drank and there were no consequences. My first real drunk, it was my aunt and uncle's wedding. They were doing the toast and my dad got champagne and filled the plastic stem up of the champagne glasses for each of us kids to do the toast with them. And we did the toast. My other brothers and sisters took one sip and they were like, "Blah, that stuff tastes horrible." Well, I drank mine. My dad whisked my stepmom onto the dance floor and they were dancing. And he said he was, looking for his kids, and he could see my brother Aaron dancing, my sister Rihanna over there, my sister Lindsay. But he couldn't find me, and then he said he looked over and he saw this tiny little hand coming up from under the table. And it was tapping around until it felt the champagne glass, and it went back down and came back up empty. And so that was the first time I got drunk. Everybody thought it was hilarious. I was acting a fool, but everybody was having a great time with that. And again, the most important thing that came out of that was I was drinking without any consequences whatsoever. So, going forward, once I got into high school and had access to beer, I started drinking alcoholically. It was beginning to be the point where I had to drink before school, leave, some warm beer in the trunk of my car, drink it at lunchtime, and then afterwards, get some alcohol after school, just to make it through the day. And I didn't realize it at the time. I thought I was just choosing to drink that much. I thought this is what all kids do. They party in high school. And then one thing led to another, and I started picking up other products. And I used those alcoholically as well. And this went on, for 15, 20 years, and until I was broken down And it wasn't until I got into this work that I realized that I was absolutely powerless over alcohol. As far as the step goes, fear. So I was really afraid before I flew out to California. I spent about a week just, with a ton of anxiety and fear about what, feelings were going to come up and all that with burying my dad. And I got there, and there was just love and support from my family, my brothers and sisters. And we all just really rallied together as a family. It was a beautiful service. We all got to say, things that we loved about our dad, memories that came up. And it's funny because I love taking friends out to eat. It's like one of my things that I like to do. And my father was just like that. And everybody's story when they talked about my dad was like, well, when Sid used to take me out to eat, every single story related to him taking people out to dinner and stuff. And so I just felt really connected. And when my stepmom shared her piece, she just really dug into what my dad really thought about us kids. And it was all positive. I shared I was the one who gave my dad the most difficulty raising because I had a ton of, junk going on and rehab after rehab that he constantly paid for and supported me. And some of the words that she said were absolutely healing. And I thought it was going to reopen wounds, but it actually, closed some wounds. And I felt very at peace by the time the service was over. As far as the way that fear drove me in the past, driven by 100 forms of fear, right? And I was afraid of everything. I was afraid to succeed. I was afraid to fail. And when it came down to making that list of fears, my wonderful sponsor had me list those fears. And once I got done with that, he told me to look at the opposites of each and see if those had any relevance. And so I did that and noticed that, it was a lot of controversy with that. And he also asked me to think of the very first time that I had that feeling. And a ton of these came up, and I couldn't even tell you when I started feeling them. They were my whole life, that I had never not known that fear. And through that experience, I got to write down those things. And a ton of them came up from, childhood, not being accepted, the fear of loss, the fear of losing my parents, just a ton of those situations that I had no control over. And like the way that I act out in fear throughout my life is what gets me into the trouble that I get in. And it talks about it was an evil and corroding thread, and the fabric of our existence was shot through with it. So when I first read shot through, I was thinking like 12-gauge shotgun, boom, But it was my wonderful sponsor that explained to me that the shot was what they used to weave in and out of the threads to make a fabric. And the fabric of my existence, having that weaved in to every single part of that. And, most of these fears are maybe real and maybe practical, and some of them are just fancy and not practical at all. And it was all in my head. When it talks about setting the ball rolling, I set the ball rolling usually because the way that I reacted in fear and the way that I treated people because of that fear. And then it talks about it ought to be classified with stealing, and I can so relate to that because fear is the robber of joy, and it absolutely takes every bit of positivity and happiness away from the present moment. And when I reviewed my fears thoroughly, put them down on paper, even though I didn't have resentment connected to them. And, once I got them on paper, I was able to look at them and noticed how much of my life was actually dominated by these fears. And when it talks about wasn't it because self-reliance failed us, that's absolutely true. Relying on myself, not having access to the power. I had no idea. Is that the time?
No.
Oh.
I don't know why. I have no idea.
I was like, yes, that flowed out perfect.
No idea.
I can stop right here. Cha-ching.
You're halfway.
Oh, okay. And where was my train of thought? Where was my train of thought?
Self-reliance failed us.
Anyways, so I realized that, how long these have been dominating my life. And self-reliance failed every single time. I didn't have any idea that what I was lacking was power throughout my entire life. I thought I was the power. I thought, I was going to be the propulsion for my actions. Having irrational thoughts like, nobody's going to help you. You got to do this all alone. You got to, if you want something done, you got to do it yourself. And a lot of that may have been taught to me as a kid to be self-reliant and all that. And many of it was absolutely imaginary, things that I had just told myself. Maybe seen it in a movie and adopted that to my life. Heard it, someone else say it and just adopt that into my life. And I was an absolute mess because of it. And, can't really talk about, the fourth step without going through the first three really, because I have no reason to do the fourth unless I'm convinced of the ABCs, right? Finally admitting that I was completely powerless and that my life was unmanageable. I thought life was manageable because I was managing it, even though it was falling apart all around me. And I had that fundamental idea of God that was pressed upon me in my childhood. And those were the foxhole prayers that I would shoot up every time I got into trouble. I'll never do this again if you get me out of this. Well, that stopped working, and I hit jail many, many times throughout my career with alcoholism. And, having gone through so many pages in this book talking about step one, it absolutely drove home the idea that I, of myself, on my own power, there was no way that I was going to succeed in life. And so I had to have that power. It told me that was my dilemma, lack of power. So I had to have a power by which I could rely on. And it's because of the work through the book that I was able to find and discover that power within, which I call God, and the absolute necessity on me relying upon that God to make it through life. And, because of that idea that I absolutely have to have that power, it told me I had to immediately launch into a vigorous course of action. And that's when I started the fourth step. And because of that course of action, I began to, see just how important God is in my life. And, after I wrote those fears down, looked at the opposites of it, and writing down the first time that I ever experienced that fear, I, was asked to what should I have done instead? What should I have done instead of hanging on to this fear for so long? And, the repetitive answer is I should have trusted God. I should have relied on God. I didn't have the power. He did the entire time. And, if lack of power is my dilemma, I should have relied on him. And then, the prayer that we get to write over and over and over until it's beat into us, God, please remove my fear. direct my attention to what you would have me be. And, after about the 10th time writing that, it really started sinking in. And it wasn't just copying the words from one to another. It was like a prayer with tears in my eyes, like absolutely direct my attention to what you would have me be. And right here it says, on page 68, it says, we trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. We are in the world to play the role He assigns. So this tells me why I'm in this world, to play the role that He assigns me. Again?
I'm going to shut it off. You got 5 minutes left. I'll shut it off.
Okay,
I don't know what I'm doing.
that's fine. And if I humbly rely on Him, He enables me to match calamity with serenity. And, hearing the promises in many different meetings, it talks about right here in this book, we commence to outgrow fear. And that doesn't promise me that I'm not going to have fear at all. It just promises me that once I have that power in my life, that I don't need to do it anymore. I can allow God to do it for me, and I can outgrow fear. Fear is a constant in my life, but I absolutely never lose faith that God is going to get me through it. I may have anxiety about the future, I may have regret about the past, but it was explained to me like there's a reason why the windshield of a car is so big and the rearview mirror is so small. Because I'm supposed to focus on like what's here right now, and if I'm looking in the past in that small rearview mirror, I need to just glance in it, and that's it. And most of the time when I stay in that mindset, I'm in absolute peace with God and those around me. Having fear in the present day, if I'm connected with God, if I'm doing 10, 11, and 12 to the best of my willingness, that happens pretty fast. I outgrow fear pretty fast. And, if I have this God that is so big, and so powerful, why would I not let Him handle the situations, instead of my finite self? Because I obviously proved, my track record completely proved throughout my life that I could not do it on my own, and that I had no power whatsoever to outgrow fear. And, I appreciate everybody in this room. Everything that you've ever shared in this room, it absolutely sunk in and worked its way into my heart. And that's why I love this meeting so much. Coming in, having not done the work, and being able to go through the work and sit and keep my mouth shut, listening to those who had been through the work, gave me a grasp on, what is really important in this program. I realized that my disease is, a lack of self-esteem. And when I have God in my life, sometimes I have to ask myself those words that I'm telling myself in my head, like, is that the voice of truth? Would my God tell me those things? And He's, most of the time it's absolutely not. He would not treat me like that. Those negative thoughts would absolutely not come out of my God's mouth. And, for everybody who is just getting started in this process, keep reading, keep writing. The miracle does happen. And it's absolutely available to anyone and everyone who's willing to put the work in. So stay in the work. And you can get through this, absolutely. And that's all I have to share today. Thank you.
Good job, boys. Sorry about that.